Nde-Gbashma. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Now, and welcome back to Indigenous Food Friday. Today, we are cooking outside. So I have my fire started. We want some nice big coals. So keep it going for a while because you're gonna want a layer of coals on the bottom and enough to cover our chicken, what we're doing today. So what you're gonna need is, of course, chicken. That's what I have. But you can use any kind of fowl. You can use even turkey, pheasant, sage hen, all sorts of things, like guinea fowl, any kind of chicken or fowl. This is great for camping or when we're hunting because we can just get a sage hen or a pheasant while we're out hunting, and then you cook it right there. Now, if you catch or you get a fresh bird, you don't even need to take the feathers off. Okay, and I'll get to it. I know you're probably like, what? We're not eating feathers? No. This has the feathers off because I got this at the supermarket because I don't have any meat chickens right now. So this I just got from the supermarket. But you can use any kind of fowl, okay? Remember that. Then I've got an onion I've just kind of chopped up. I have some culinary sage, some rosemary, a little bit of thyme. And then for seasoning, I have my fire cider. I'm in a mixture of, I have dried leeks that I turned into powder, but you can use onion powder, salt, pepper, and a little bit of paprika and cayenne. You can omit anything that you don't want, or if something sounds good, go ahead and add it. So those are my seasonings right there. Then you're going to need corn husks. Now, if you are doing a whole bird with the feathers on, you don't need the corn husks. But because I'm using a bird that has been defeathered, I'm going to use corn husks to cover it. And again, I'll show you why. If you're using corn husks, make sure you soak these for a while so they're nice and wet and pliable so they won't tear. And then you're gonna need a bucket of clay. That's right, clay. We're gonna cook these in clay. I have an abundance of clay on our property, so it's pretty easy to come by. If you don't have clay on your property or you don't know where to get any natural clay, that's okay. You can buy it. It's just potter's clay. You want to go through it and make sure, if you're getting it from the land, make sure there's no rocks in it, and you're going to really want to move it so that it's pliable. Yes, we are cooking this chicken in clay. So while my fire is building its coals, you can say it's a nice big fire. I want some good coals because we're going to wrap this in clay and then we're going to cook it in the fire for like 4 hours. And you're going to love it. Okay, so we've got our chicken. First we need to prepare our chicken, right? I'm going to move it off the towel. We want it nice and dry. So wash it, rinse it, and then dry it really well. Next, I'm going to take my fire cider, okay, and we're just, if you don't have fire cider, you can use apple cider vinegar and add like some cayenne and maybe a little bit of citrus to it, and we're gonna rub this all over that yummy fire cider. Okay, now I'm gonna stuff the inside with the onions. If you don't like onions, that's fine. You can use something else. You can put like an apple in here if you like a sweet chicken. I'm not a fan of sweet chicken, so I don't. So we're going with onions. Okay, then I'm gonna stick a sprig of rosemary in there. I love rosemary. I think I put it in almost everything. And then I have a sprig of culinary sage. I'm gonna pop in there. Now the benefit of cooking, and then I've got some thyme. The benefit of cooking in clay is none of the juices escape at all. They're all gonna be trapped in here to really get into the chicken. Okay, next step is seasoning. So I have some dried ground up sage. I'm gonna sprinkle that all over. if the wind doesn't take it away. Now, if you wanted to as well, if you had time, you could soak it like the chicken in a brine with the fire cider, maybe add some salt. But when you're camping, it's usually like what you get at the time. If you hear my dogs barking, I'm sorry, they're crazy. And then I'm gonna rub all over that mixture of the salt, pepper, cayenne, paprika, and my dried onions, or dried leeks. And really get that all over. I'm gonna drain this a little bit, so that's a benefit of cooking outside too, right? Sure. Give it back to the earth. So we're gonna rub this all over. So then, okay, let me add on. If you just caught a bird, like a pheasant or a sage hen or whatever, gut it, you know, dress it, but you don't need to take the feathers off, okay? So you're gonna dress it. You'd put all the seasonings on the inside. I like to take the feathers off because then I can put all of, you know, the seasonings on and in. But if you're camping and you don't have time for that, you just need to eat, you're just gonna put the onions and any kind of herbs you want in the cavity, leave the feathers on, and then you're gonna skip this next step where we put the corn husks on. You're gonna want some twine. Now, if you're doing a bird that has feathers, you don't need twine because you're not gonna be tying it up in anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay out the twine so it's easier to wrap if my twine doesn't fall apart first. Of course it's gonna do that. So I'm gonna put 3 across. Anyone else's twine do this just for funsies? And then we're gonna put, so 3 across and 3 up and down. There we go. So almost like you're setting up a tic-tac-toe grid. Okay, twine, you've seen better days. Okay, now I'm gonna lay out some nice corn husks. Kind of get them straight, and we're gonna lay that down. Almost like you're weaving without weaving, you know? Now, if you don't save your corn husks and dry them, which you should, so you're not wasting anything, you can get these like at Mexican markets. They usually have some. But you should be keeping yours anyway. They're easy to dry and they're easy to keep, and they keep forever. So we're just gonna line this up and go bigger than your chicken because you're gonna want it to wrap around, and do a few layers. So you see why I went across this way first? Now we're gonna go this way next, so that we can really layer it. Also, because we don't really want to eat clay, so the purpose of the corn husks is to protect the chicken or the bird from the clay. Then we're gonna go across again, and I'm gonna go out a little bit farther this time so that we can make wrapping our chicken easier. Plus, I think the corn husks add a really nice flavor. So I would rather take the feathers off and use the corn husks. But like I said, when you're out hunting or camping and this is the meal you're making, you know, you do what you have to do. I don't generally take corn husks with me when we go hunting or camping, so, oh, there's some that just got returned back to the earth. Okay, now we're gonna put the bird on top. I'm gonna turn it breast down so the legs and wings are tucked right in there. And then we're gonna layer the top, right? So just keep doing that. Start here. And I'll do the same amount of layers, 2-3 layers, so that the clay won't have a chance to get in. If it does, it's not gonna hurt anything, it's just clay. But it might not feel very good on your teeth, you know? So. And I love to cook like this time of year because it's a little cool, so I'm not too hot. It's easier to cook over a fire because you're not roasting to death. And I just love to be outside. You really want to get it tucked in. It's a nice sized one. And if it doesn't like to stay in place, that's all right. You're going to tie it all together anyway. Okay. Now you just tie it up. I like to start in the middle. And then just tie it up, knot it. Now we'll go this way, and just the same method. I'm going to start in the middle. And tie it tight. You don't want it so tight that it breaks or tears the corn, just enough to kind of wrap it all up. I'm going to turn it, and then any loose strings, I might add a few more to hold these in. We'll see. But if you have loose ones, you can just use those to tie around the other side and help tuck those corn husks in. I might do one more on the ends. And if you've got hemp twine, it actually works better, but I don't have any hemp twine, so I'm just using cotton. There we go. And then we'll just tuck our corn in. Beautiful. Okay, so there's that part. Now is the next part. So I'm going to take all my rings off because we are going to get into the clay. Okay, the next thing that you're going to need for this is clay. Now, I'm pretty fortunate, depending on how you look at it, but I have clay on the property, so I can just go fill up a bucket. You're going to want to soak it in water so that you can make it nice and pliable. And then you're going to have to work it, make sure there isn't any rocks in it, make sure it's moldable. And this will take some time. So you just get both hands in there and you start working it until you kind of want it this consistency where you can mold it. So it'll take some time. Some people, if they're making a lot, they'll put in like a big tub and smash it with their feet. So whatever works for you. If you don't have clay on your property, of course you can buy it. It's just clay. So like potter's clay, stuff like that. This is really good stuff right here too. This is really what you want it to get to, is like a Play-Doh type of consistency. I know that probably looks really gross, but this is what you're going for. So I'm gonna work this over with both hands and then show you, and then I'll be right back. Okay, now to the next part. We've got our clay. We've worked it so that it's more pliable. And it's kind of fun. And like I said earlier, like this would all be a community effort. So if you have more than one person doing this, it takes a lot less time. And if you're making a lot of these, just put them in a tub and then use your feet to really like work the clay out. If you purchase potter's clay, I don't think you need to do that. But it just totally depends on what kind of clay you have. Make sure there isn't any rocks or anything like that. You want clay. And then you just put it on and smooth it out. Almost like you're making pottery. Because that is kind of what you're doing. And you're just going to massage this all around until you have it completely encapsulated in clay. You know what's really crazy is one of my chickens is hanging it around right now. Just going around, seeing if I'm gonna throw her any scraps. I did let her have the leftover onions, so she's happy. She's a happy bird. It's just interesting that I'm cooking chicken right now and I have one walking around. Kids love to do this too, so if you get it all prepared so that it's ready to go, whether you have feathers on or off, they love to do this part. Let them go crazy. Well, not too crazy. So you don't want any air bubbles. You want everything nice and smoothed and coated. Like you're gonna put on a good, you know, half-inch layer of clay on there. Now you can also use this method to cook anything, to cook potatoes, you know, because traditionally we don't have tin foil. So you can use this to cook potatoes, any kind of root vegetables, corn. But even with corn, we'll just leave the husk on and just throw it in, so you don't necessarily need clay. You could also cook squash this way. Really, and bread. You can cook bread this way as well. cornbread, I must say, because if you used wheat, it would probably rise, and there's no room for that to move in the clay. So you can just see how much fun this is, and also why we do this outside. This is also like if you are going hunting and you already have a bird, like you're gonna have a morning fire anyway to cook your breakfast and your coffee or tea. So just keep those coals going, and then before you leave, you can prepare this super quick and throw it in the fire, and then when you get done, your meal will be done. So you just come home and there you go. Okay, now I'm gonna flip it over and we'll do this side. Oh, it's a perfect temperature right now. I love it. I am gonna be covered in soot and clay by the end of this. That's how it always goes. Now before you throw this into the fire, you're gonna wanna let it set up just a little bit. And being outside with the breeze, it won't take long. And you can smooth it out to make it look super gorge. But it's just basically gonna look like a mud brick no matter what you do. But you wanna make sure there's no air bubbles and that everything is nice and covered. Okay, I'm gonna let this side dry for like maybe 5 minutes, and then we're gonna flip it again and make sure there isn't any air bubbles on the other side or open gaps. Okay, so now I've covered everything. I've turned it over, covered everything, made sure that there's no air bubbles, any air pockets. And I did set it on a hand towel just so that it's easier for me to transfer over to the fire. So that is our next step. Now here's the fire, and you can see I've moved all the big logs around so that they're off to the side, and then all the coals are right in the middle. A gorgeous bed of nice hot coals. So now I'm just going to very carefully set this into the coals. That's how carefully you do it, just like that. Now we're just gonna snug the coals as close as you can get it, and even on top. Now I want to get the fire building right on top of our clay chicken. So I'm basically going to start a whole nother fire right up there. Whew, it's hot. Now you know why this is a perfect meal to make while you're hunting, because it's usually in the colder months. Now if you have charcoal like the briquettes, you can use those too. That's just, not as traditional. And we always have a fire going at camp anyway, so this is just how we do it. Okay, it's been about 3 hours later. It didn't take 4 hours for this one, but about 3 hours later, it's done. When I did pick it up out of the fire pit though, the clay fell off, which is unfortunate because it's great fun at this point to crack it open. And you basically, if it's still covered in the clay, you'll take, I don't know, a mallet or a spoon or something, and you break open the clay, and then you're just gonna peel it back. When I took it out, the clay just kind of fell off, which is fine. Sometimes that happens. So I've got it here cooling. I did insert a meat thermometer just to make sure it was cooked all the way through, and it is. So I'm gonna let this rest and cool for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna pull off the corn husk. Now, if you did a bird that was full of feathers, the clay probably won't fall off. It usually doesn't if you have the feathers still on, because the feathers will hold it on. And then the cool thing is you crack open the clay, and then when you peel it back, it just pulls the feathers off at the same time. It's really cool. It'll pull the skin off as well, but if you're eating wild game, the skin isn't that great, cooked that way. There's other things you can do with it. But for this, I didn't have the feathers, so we're not having that whole experience, but just take my word for it. And I know I'm covered in clay and soot, but that's just part of the game, right? So we're gonna let this rest for about 10 minutes, and then we're gonna pull back the corn husk, and I'll show you what we have. Okay, so here it is. I've been letting it sit. I have removed kind of the corn husk because I wanted to make sure everything was done. So I just peeled that back, and you can see how gorgeous it looks. Some of the corn husk, you can tell it's going to add a lot of flavor, but all of the seasonings as well as the onions I put in there, they're all cooked and you can smell it. I wish you could smell it. So we're going to go ahead and carve this. I'm not the greatest at carving birds, but so don't judge. So we're just going to go ahead and cut into this. Oh, it looks beautiful. See, look at that meat. It's just gorgeous. And it's actually kind of falling off, so it's making it super easy. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. Look at that. It's just gorgeous. And you can tell, like, it's super juicy. See, I'm making a mess. It's super juicy. It's not dry, especially because you want to let it sit for at least 10 minutes before you cut into it, so that all the juices stay in there. And I really wish the clay would have stayed intact, because again, it's so much fun to crack it open, but it also helps it stay a little juicier. But honestly, it looks like everything stayed just fine. It just looks perfect. And then just a side note, I always keep the carcass after you're done carving it and you get all the meat off of it, and I'll make a really nice chicken broth or chicken stock. So that way nothing goes to waste. So keep that in mind. So this carcass won't get thrown out. I will keep it and make a really nice chicken stock. And then tonight I'm just serving this with green beans, but you can serve it with anything. Potatoes, squash is really good, of course. I mean, when is squash not good? Okay, I'll finish carving this later to get all the meat off, and that'll even save all the little pieces to add to the chicken stock or to add to chicken soup later. But this is gorgeous. So here's your chicken that we just made in a clay pot. I hope you try it, and if you do, let me know what you think. Enjoy.